The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back to the Adult Ballet Studio. Our guest this month is amazing. Sarah Witherup is an adult ballet dancer, endurance athlete, and volunteer studio manager at Dance Theater Northwest in Washington. We spoke about how ballet became not just a passion for her, but a lifeline in adulthood. As a highly trained endurance athlete, Sarah is no stranger to challenges. But after the loss of her son and at the age of 49, Sarah stepped into a ballet studio for the first time and says it was one of the most difficult and fulfilling steps she's taken. Discovering ballet began a journey that would intertwine with her gender transition, self-discovery, and healing process. She spoke with me about what it means to enter the traditional and highly structured world of ballet as a transgender woman, how dance became a vital part of stepping fully into her identity, and the challenges and joys she's encountered along the way. She also shares the work she's doing to make ballet more inclusive, including establishing a non-binary dress code and an adult ballet intensive at Dance Theater Northwest. I'm so inspired by her and all the work that she's doing to not only provide visibility for transgender dancers in ballet, but also to make ballet as a whole more accessible to everyone. As a heads up, this episode discusses suicide, depression, and PTSD. The bulk of the conversation is in the first 15 minutes and again in the last 15 minutes. If you or anyone you know is struggling, there are resources in the show notes. And please be kind to yourselves and skip ahead if you hear something that's too difficult. Let's hear what Sarah had to say.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Well, I'm really happy to meet you. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. And you're in Seattle, Washington, is that right?
I'm about an hour outside of Seattle, so we're on the Puget Sound. But about an hour outside of Seattle, closer to Tacoma.
Okay. Oh, nice. I know that you're an adult ballet student. You're the volunteer studio manager at Dance Theater Northwest. And I think you mentioned that you helped to organize the adult ballet intensive there, which is really exciting. Yes, so how did you sort of get connected with that studio? And can you talk about its adult program a little bit and your involvement?
My getting into adult ballet goes hand in hand with my transition to being a female. And in my case, you can't have one without the other. I know that's kind of odd and strange to sit there and say, well, you can transition to a woman without ballet. In my case, it wouldn't have been nearly as successful without ballet. And so I really wouldn't be who I am today if it weren't for ballet. So it starts back when I was younger. And one of the questions you typically ask all your guests is how did you come to love ballet or start ballet? And what I found interesting is everybody has an answer to that question pretty readily. Either my mom threw me in a class, or I went to a ballet, or I walked by a studio, or everybody seems to have an origin story of where it came from. I don't have one because I grew up with gender dysphoria and a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of pressure not to have those feelings or those thoughts. And so ballet was one of those things that somehow just organically grew in me. I don't know how or where it came from. I don't have an origin story for it. I always knew I liked the prettiness of it. I love the dedication. I'm a hard worker and I'm an endurance athlete, or I was. So knowing how much work and effort it takes to be good in ballet always drew me to it. But because of my gender dysphoria, because growing up in the 70s and 80s, that was something that wasn't known back then. It wasn't as known as it is today. And I was in an environment where I was pretty much, anytime there were signs that potentially I had gender dysphoria, I was told to repress it. I was told that's not acceptable. And so anytime I had a love for ballet, it was always repressed and never came out. And so what brought me to ballet, two things. First, this one's hard, and you'll have to put your little disclaimer in your video for people. In February 2019, my son, who was serving in the United States Marine Corps, was suffering from PTSD due to multiple aviation accidents. He was an aviator in the Marine Corps. The PTSD and just it became too much for him. And we knew he had it. We were trying to get him help. We were the best we could. He was in Japan, and we were trying to do the very best we could. And then in December of 2018, Sumo 41, an aircraft from his base, had a mid-air collision over the Sea of Japan, and all on board that aircraft unfortunately perished. And he assigned the crew to that flight. He assigned the enlisted crew and knew everybody on that flight really well. He worked very closely with them. And so, like I said, a few months later, he took his own life from PTSD. And so from that, I became pretty significantly depressed. And myself, because of my gender dysphoria and my journey to transitioning to a woman, I myself had a couple of suicide attempts in my life. And so my family and I became pretty concerned because I hit a low point. And we were very concerned that I would maybe have PTSD myself. And so I knew this. I knew I needed to get out of it. And I knew I needed to do something about it. As I said, I was an endurance athlete. And I've run many marathons. And so I hadn't run in many years because I was having some knee issues. And so I looked at my wife one day and I'm like, there's a survivors program that can get you into the Marine Corps Marathon, which is pretty hard to get into. Do you think in 2 months we can train up and do the marathon? And if you ever give my wife a physical challenge like that, she's always going to say, well, of course we can do it. So of course, she had done 4 Ironman herself at this point.
Oh, wow. You're a definite power couple.
Yeah. So she was like, well, of course we can do it. So we trained up and we did the Marine Corps Marathon, and physical exercise and being active and getting out of the house is what I needed to pull myself out of that funk and pull myself out of the spiral that I was in that could have led to something disastrous. So I reconnected with being active again and being out of the house, and it really saved my life. That organization was called Wear Blue, Run to Remember, and they're a survivors program that puts on memorials all over the United States. And I've always been a huge proponent of service. I joined Wear Blue as their memorial director and traveled all over the United States. And I really, really got into running again. And again, the endorphins and all the exercise and the physical activity was, I honestly can say Wear Blue, Run to Remember saved my life. They really did. I found a family, I found a community, and through them, I even got encouraged through them and my wife to go do my own Ironman. There were several news agencies who were following my story, and you can look up my dead name and go search YouTube and find the many different stories that were done by news agencies on my Ironman. So that was quite the accomplishment. So because of my son, I found physical activity again, and I found the desire to volunteer. And so I had that ingrained in me. The next event that brought me to ballet was I was in my 40s. I was a happy male. I was living a good life. One of my oldest friends in the world, she and I served together in the USS Lexington, and we were visiting her in Washington, D.C. And she sat down with my wife and I for dinner and came out to us and told us she was going to transition from male to female while serving as a commander in the U.S. Coast Guard. And I was very proud of her, and I was going to be an advocate. And I was like, well, that's, wow, something I don't think I would ever do in my life. But I found that very interesting. And then a couple of days later, just her and I went out to dinner, and she ended up telling me her whole story. And one of her biggest fears was coming out to me and my wife was that she would lose us as friends. And that is a big fear of people who do come out. Again, how is your family going to react? How is society going to react? So it's a very huge fear. And so she had that fear with some of her oldest and closest friends that if she came out to us, we would lose. And so after she told me her story, I sat there in silence, and all her fears came true in her mind, that she lost me as a friend, that I was like, okay, this is too much. I'd never do this. And she's like, are you okay? I'm afraid I just lost you. And I'm like, no, I don't know how to explain this to you, but you just told me my life story. A lot of the things you did in the closet, I do in the closet. And it was amazing to hear that somebody actually could transition, because it was, yes, in this day and age, who transgenders are, that people are transitioning, but I had lived 48 years of my life as a male. I had no interest in transitioning. And I told her, good for you. I'm proud of you, but that's something I'm never going to do. Yes, I'm a happy male. I'm married. I have 3 beautiful kids. And I am in a point in my career and my life that I can't do that. So good for you. Well, she encouraged me to tell my wife. And I was like, oh, never. I'm sorry. I'm taking this to my grave. She was the first person I ever told. She was going to be the last person I ever told. Several months later, I don't know how much long later, but eventually I did. I got the courage and told my wife. And eventually my wife and I both came to the understanding I was a woman. And what that meant was, well, time to transition. So, and I'm still working on my transition because that was only 2 years ago.
Wow.
So because of my transition and because of my son, I'm like, so what else in my life am I missing out on? Because with my son, I learned that life is short. I really came to this realization that, well, life is short, so let's become a woman who I truly am and be my true self. And second of all, let's start looking at things that really I've kept repressed. And again, I don't know where it came from. I don't know why, but ballet popped up pretty quickly. And so I don't have this origin story of where this ballet love came from. And I stumbled upon Dance Theater Northwest website, and they had wonderful adult programs. And so I was super scared, sat down, took about 3 hours to write a very long email to them explaining I was going to start transitioning. I was still presenting male, still using my dead name, but I didn't want to wait. I asked if I could get some private lessons before I came in. I didn't know at the time, but Dance Theater Northwest didn't do private lessons for people who weren't enrolled as regular students. We have since changed that. We now have a beautiful introductory private lessons to help people come in who are starting or scared. And we've started that, and it's a huge success. And because of my long story and because of the email I shared, one of the teachers took pity and said, sure, come on in. We'll do some private lessons to get you used to it. So Miss Deb, I absolutely love her. She has been very instrumental in my ballet journey and my transition. We went into my first private lessons, and my first lesson went well. Ultimate fear was that Miss Deb would sit there and say, well, you know what? I'm sorry, you're just not good enough. You really can't dance, and this is just not going to be for you. That was my greatest fear. So after our first lesson, she was like, I'm like, can we do a second lesson? Sure, absolutely. So we scheduled a second lesson. And after the second lesson, my greatest fear came true because I said, okay, this is going well. Can we do a third lesson? And she said, no. And that's when I'm like, you're right. Oh, I can't dance. Oh, she's letting me down softly that I'm not welcome back because I really can't dance. And she goes, no, I'm not going to do another private lesson with you until you come to the beginning ballet class. So it was her. She always had this way of just pushing me at the right time. So she is just one of these incredible teachers who would just sit there and just know when it's time to give you that push. And so it's like, no, we're not going to do the private lessons. You need to go to class.
Well, that's important. And the best teachers, like, Miss Deb sounds like one of the best teachers because they know exactly how to push, but not to push too far. And, the right moments, like you said. First of all, thank you so much for sharing all of that background. A few things come to mind. What you shared at the beginning, the difficult loss of your son. I mean, that's an unimaginable loss. And it's hard to go through something like that, let alone share and talk about it. So thank you so much for sharing some of that grief with us. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you keep saying that you don't really have a ballet origin story. And to me, I mean, your story is yours to claim. So I can't tell you what it is, but to me, it sounds like all of this is your ballet origin story. All of the difficulties that you went through with the gender dysphoria, going through your gender transition, some of the family issues, the loss of your son, all of that was leading you to ballet as part of your healing and the next step in your life. I think with the arts and, ballet in particular, it's such a calling. It kind of pops up. It's something that you feel drawn to. You don't exactly know why. And then you figure out why as you go along. But thank you so much for sharing your background. I think it will really resonate with our listeners. And I want to talk before we get into, your story, your gender transition. And I want to talk about your background as an endurance athlete as well. But before we get into all of that, I want to talk a little bit more about Dance Theater Northwest, because I think this sounds like such a great studio, great teachers. And I know that you mentioned that you sort of spearheaded their adult dance intensive, which is really exciting. So can you talk a little bit more about that and what students who participate can expect and get out of it?
Yeah. So once I started taking classes and really got into Dance Theater Northwest, what I came to realize was it wasn't that I was drawn to dance per se or ballet or the costumes. I mean, all that is wonderful and nice. It's the community. I did not realize this community that I was going to become a part of. Fun little story really quickly. So I started in ballet as a male in the classes, and they didn't tell me this till about a year later. But all the females in the class were so excited. They're like, oh, look, we've got this strong 6'1" male who's an endurance athlete. Look at all the lifts and the pas de deux and all the exciting stuff we're going to be able to do. Well, womp, womp, womp. A few months later, they weren't disappointed, but they're like, we got to think of something new.
We got to regroup and think of something else.
So, and again, that was part of how Ms. Deb pushed me, because it was great, because the community that I gained was just fascinating and was incredible, which is why I jumped into dancing with both feet. Like I said, I jump in with both feet. Yeah. So I actually did stop volunteering with Wear Blue, Run to Remember and then started volunteering with Dancing in Northwest. And just a little bit, I just started working on their website, and it's now full blown their studio manager. But yeah, so Miss Deb was able to help me in that. So the community and Miss Deb helped in my transition as well, because again, I was terrified to transition. Absolutely terrified. And here I am in a studio where, well, we look at mirrors all day long. And so, one day in class, I was like, okay, I legally changed my name. I'd like you to start using Sarah as my name. And everybody and Miss Deb did a really good job of making that switch and to she, her. But the problem was I was still presenting male. But again, Miss Deb knew where I was going. And so she was able, and the community there, which I was just starting to really love this community. I found this community that was giving me the confidence to transition. And so Miss Deb pulled me after class one day and she's like, so you're Sarah, she, her, right? I'm like, well, yeah, thank you. And she's like, okay, well, Sarah, she, her, you're out of dress code. And I was like, oh, excuse me, what? And she's like, yep, I think you need to come into a black leotard next week. And I was fully prepared for it. But again, it was that push. And that's what ballet has given me. Ballet, as part of my transition, was able to push me in the direction I wanted to go. And so I was prepared to come back the next week in the black leotard, but I was still wearing the male bottoms, male shoes, and all that kind of stuff. And after a few weeks of that, she's like, okay, Sarah, full female dress code. And so I was like, okay. So it was just, and everybody was so supportive. Everybody was. And so that's what brought me into Dancing in Northwest. And I'm like, I want to see this place grow. Our artistic director, Miss Melanie, is amazing. And this is the theater, or the studio always has had a very rich adult program. I mean, we have a fantastic youth ensemble as well, and great youth dancers. And then not too long after that, I performed in my first recital, which was scary. Recently transitioned, recently presenting female, but still going through a lot of transition. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the dance. And yes, I can dance better now. And I wanted to be a part of this. So again, their website needs some help because of COVID. Lots of studios shut down and lots of studios were struggling post-COVID. And Dancing in Northwest is a nonprofit 501c3. And so through gracious donors, the studio did not shutter during COVID and stayed open. And so coming out of COVID is about the time I joined, about a year after COVID, still struggling to try to keep the doors open, still struggling to try to get our enrollment back up and get some people back into the studio. People were still very nervous, after post-COVID to come back into a studio. And I'm like, well, what I can do to help is make the website better. Because at the time they didn't have a studio manager because, again, they couldn't quite afford it at that time. And we're just trying to keep the doors open so that we have this place for adults to come to and the youth. I don't want to exclude our youth because our youth are wonderful. We want them to keep coming as well. And so we were just trying to keep the door open. And so I'm like, I can help. I love to volunteer. I love to spend my time helping the community, and I can't think of a better way to do it. So once I got in, I kept increasing the things I would take on. I took on grant writing and started doing some grant writing for the studio. We were still, because of COVID, using physical punch cards.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's not very efficient, and I'm pretty computer savvy. So I'm like, well, I'm going to propose to the board that we install an online registration system, an online studio management system. I eventually installed that system in the studio. We now have electronic sign-in. Now that I'm registering all the students and managing the students, it was just, okay, well, the next step is, why don't I just kind of start managing more of the studio and helping with pretty much everything now. So I help our artistic director. I'm her assistant. I assist all the teachers. Our wonderful staff is amazing. And last January, maybe not quite a year ago, maybe about a year and about 14, 15 months ago, I went to Miss Melanie and I'm like, I like the idea of going off and doing a ballet intensive. And what do you recommend for adults? Because I'm still a beginner. Which ballet intensive would you recommend for me? And she's like, well, why don't you just put one on? Oh, okay, sure. That's an interesting twist. Okay, well, she's like, yeah, go ahead and organize one. And it's interesting because there was a news article done by it. Megan Burbank came as a reporter and did a story on our ballet intensive. And she even called out a few things that were not traditionally done at ballet intensives because I didn't know. I thought they'd just be cool to add in. So there were things I wanted to do. So I did. I'm like, okay, so we wanted to make it for adults only, and we organized it around where you only have to take Thursday and Friday off, and then it's Saturday and Sunday. So it's 4 days, and technically you only have to miss 2 days of work instead of an entire week. Or those, I still don't know how the intensive works where they're like 15 weeks in a row. I don't get that. I don't know how adults have that much time to do 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of intensives, but I guess there's people who have time for that. So we really geared it towards adults, and we wanted to make it welcoming for beginners as well. And make it challenging enough for more advanced people who are on, we put in some point and variation lessons and classes. And again, you don't have to attend, each session. When you learn what the sessions are, you don't have to attend every session. You can pick and choose, or you can sit there and say, I'm going to give it a shot. So it really was successful. And it was a lot of fun. And we met a lot of wonderful dancers from outside our studio who are coming back this year. This year, we're filling up quickly. We actually are going to reach capacity here, probably not too much here in the future, and actually have to cut off registration here soon. But it was just so much fun just to be in that type of environment. We had a male and female dress code, and with my effort and with the effort of a couple other students, we worked with Melanie and the board, and we're able to now include a non-binary, non-gender conforming dress code to even be more inclusive. And so we're really reaching out and trying to sit there and say, there is a dress code, but we also want you to be comfortable and excited. So that was another thing I helped implement. And then, as I said, when I first started, there weren't introductory ballet classes for adults. We now, and hugely successful, we have introductory ballet private lessons for adults. So those are just Ballet Dance Theater Northwest has just become this family of mine. And it's just the community. Like I said, what I came to find was it wasn't the dancing, it was the community. That's why I'm there. That's why I volunteer my time so much. It's the community. It's just amazing. I love the dance community, and I love how welcoming and open they are. Ballet and this community has encouraged me that I need to share my story. One, for those adults who are listening and scared to start, come follow me on Instagram. I'm sharing my start. I'm sharing my really bad baby giraffe dancing. Very nervous about that, but I want to be an inspiration for adults, male, females, trans, whoever. Come do ballet. It is such a wonderful experience. And it's not so much the dancing, it's the community you're going to get to experience.
I love this so much. First of all, you're exactly right. The community, those moments of joy and humor, like you shared at the beginning, with navigating the dress code and everything like that. That's what keeps people engaged in ballet. That's what keeps people coming back. And it's so important, to include laughter and joy and community in the process. It's sometimes rigorous. Learning ballet is so challenging. But also what I love, if we could just bottle your energy and your drive and share it with every studio and every company, the ballet world would be a better place because you've done so much. And I love how at the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about starting ballet, at 49, sort of beginning your gender transition. And you were like, I'm nervous. I don't know what to expect. And now here you are, you're involved in every aspect of the studio. You've become an invaluable resource. I appreciate you so much in everything that you're doing. I want to talk a little bit about your gender transformation because I think this is an important topic in ballet that isn't talked about enough. And I know that you mentioned that you sort of went through this loss of your son, some other life events that kind of led you to ballet, but also to discover your identity as a woman. And I know that ballet has kind of been rooted in these traditional gender roles. How do you think the visibility of transgender dancers is sort of redefining these conventions, and how do you hope to be a part of that process?
Oh, it's amazing. I'm so honored by how many people walk into the door of our studio and like, oh, well, we saw your story in the Seattle Emerald by Megan Burbank, and you've inspired us to come and learn more. And the, oh my gosh, Northwest Ballet Companies, the Pacific Northwest PMB, the PMB has a couple of non-binary dancers in their corps. And it's just, I now have been to a few ballets. My wonderful ballet community has brought me along and said, well, let's go see some ballet. So we just went and saw Sleeping Beauty, and watching these beautiful non-binaries in a professional company it's amazing. And it makes me feel so wonderful and accepted. And what I find in our studio is just a lot of people don't realize that there is opportunities for non-binaries and for transgenders to come and do this. Your guest a few months ago, Rob, I was just enthralled listening to his story and how he's found ballet and kind of intertwined with that community. It's really, and there's a lot of people out there who are hesitant because they do think that ballet is so binary. And I know in Tacoma there's a couple studios that also are very LGBT friendly, and we all seem to be thriving and doing really well because there is such an acceptance of it now. You could even not too long ago, even if you were in ballet and maybe you were LGBTQ, maybe you didn't tell people because you were, there was a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And I know all about that. There's a lot of shame and fear of being your true self. So it's amazing to see the changes that are happening. And I believe, it was your guest last week or a few weeks ago or a few months ago who talked about if we don't change as a dance community and start to accept these as the new norm, we're going to lose ballet altogether. We're going to lose this as an art form. We have to be inclusive. We have to be accepting. We have to invite everybody in. We have to continue to keep growing, or else we're just not going to have the funding to keep going if we keep these traditional, traditional binary standards. And it's so true. Dance Theater Northwest is thriving, not just because of it, but that's one of the reasons why we are starting to thrive, is we have such a welcoming atmosphere for everybody, however you identify.
And that's so true. It's so important because this is what audiences, students, donors, this is what they want from the art form. And if we don't evolve with, our audiences and our supporters, then where is ballet headed? It'll be stagnant. So I think that's such an important point. And you also mentioned, we spoke ahead of this interview. You sent me a beautiful email and it was so gorgeously written. I mean, not to add another thing to your plate, but you should consider becoming a writer as well because your email to me was so beautiful. And you said something in it that I love. You said ballet didn't just teach me how to dance. It gave me the confidence to exist fully, to take up space in a world that often told me I shouldn't. And I know that, as we talked about, ballet can be bound by these conventions and traditions, and it can be harmful in some cases. So how do you see your artistry and your dancing as actually a way to break stereotypes and kind of step outside of the confines?
Oh, I love that you brought up that quote. That's my favorite quote. Well, as I said at the beginning, I wouldn't be the woman I am today if it weren't for ballet. Because ballet is what gave me confidence to be a woman. In today's environment, I would be terrified to leave my house. My wife and I, we both work from home. There isn't a lot of need for me to leave the house. If it weren't for ballet, I probably wouldn't leave the house very often, other than maybe to go for a long run. And, again, we live out here in the woods, so it would be by myself. So to interact with the community and with people, my time would be limited and I would be terrified to leave the house. I'm not saying I'm still not nervous every time I'm still super nervous to go to ballet class every single day. It's still, I can't count the number of times I have cried in the studio bathroom. I think I have filled that sink with tears 5 times over because it's just, it's scary. But what ballet did for me was, as I said, Miss Deb kept giving me those gentle pushes to take that next step. And one of the things that really gave me the confidence to be in front of people is, I signed up for the first recital I could sign up for, I did. And that first recital to come out in the full female attire and in a tutu and in that beautiful outfit in front of a paying audience was terrifying, but it also gave me the confidence as a trans woman to be accepting of who I am and to love myself for who I am. I'm not perfect. It was amazing how the community and dance gave me confidence to live and to not be a hermit in my house and be afraid and ashamed of who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I'm very proud of who I am now. And I want to share that message with people. I want to share, there's so much negative news and attacks on transgenders and non-binaries and that community nowadays. I don't want to be a voice of fight. I want to be a voice of, well, you know what? I'm going to show you that a transgender woman can be healthy, happy, love life in a wonderful relationship, and I'm going to show you I'm happy. And so no matter what, try to change my gender on my passport, I don't care. I'm still going to be this wonderful, happy ballet dancer and live my life to the fullest. Thanks to ballet. Ballet gave me the courage to step into the light in class, on stage. and in life.
I mean, talk about being fully seen, stepping on stage for the first time, as a woman. That's scary and vulnerable, but it's so important you did that for yourself, for the ballet community as a whole, for everyone who's watching you. And I know you mentioned the current environment. That was my next question. There's a lot going on with attacks in trans communities right now, and it's easy to lose hope. And I know that there are transgender dancers out there who are struggling with their mental health. So I'm curious what you would say to them, what advice you would give them for sort of maintaining a sense of hope and just finding peace with their sense of self in the midst of everything.
It's a very good question, and one that I consider to be very important, because I actually struggled with it about 4 weeks ago. In my strive to be perfect, I realized that I was pushing myself too hard, not only in ballet, but try to be the perfect woman, to be the perfect spokesperson. I was really pushing myself way too hard, and it was causing me lots of mental stress. And it was starting to affect my health. I was starting to get sick. I could see it. And I had to stop and walk away from ballet for a week. And I didn't help with the studio management. I mean, a couple emergency phone calls here and there, but I had to take a full step away to realize that I was pushing myself too far and too hard and trying to be too perfect and worried about too much stuff that was going on. There was just hit after hit of bad news for trans and the LGBT community. And I was really losing it. I wasn't happy in life, so I needed to step back, disconnect from the news. So out of that, I learned I have to protect my mental well-being. I had to make some changes in my life to reconnect with why ballet was so important to me and for my well-being. And I think that's true just in life in general. You can let news, you can let outside pressures or your own internal pressures push you to a point where you start to become mentally ill. And so during that week off, I got back on my bike. I went and started doing some endurance running again to get me back into some of those endorphins I needed to find a safe space for me. And now that I'm back at the studio with my new mindset of we're here to have fun. Yes, my goal is to get on point, but we're here to enjoy this and have fun. And let's quit pushing myself so hard and let's not worry about the external lives. And it really has changed my focus and outlook in love, in life, and just in general. And I think mental health is really important for everybody. I mean, not just the LGBTQ and the trans community. You as a dancer can be pushing yourself too hard. You have to know when it's time to step back. Yes, the LGBTQ and depression, yes, we've got a little bit more on top of us, I think, than maybe the general public. But at the same time, everybody's got stresses on top of them. And you have to do what it takes. Ballet is my outlet, but I was making ballet not become my outlet, but becoming one of my stressors. And so that week to redefine who I was and what I needed to do was really important for me.
And this is an important conversation because this is such a struggle. There's so much pressure in ballet to be perfect, to not make a mistake. And then you add on top of that, the pressures of everything that's going on in the world, especially for women, especially for transgender individuals or members of the LGBTQ plus community. And it can break you if you're not careful. And so I think that's such important advice to sort of get back to the reason why you started dancing in the first place and allow it to be your space for healing and your safe space rather than something that can be detrimental to your mental health when there's so much that's already putting pressure on you. So I think that is something to be proud of, to recognize it, to take a step back, and then be able to come back in a much better headspace. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And that's one of the reasons why I just recently switched my Instagram account to public. And very, very nervously, I am posting videos of me in private lessons or in class or doing stuff. And you will see baby giraffe on roller skates on ice. You will see I'm not perfect, but I'm doing it intentionally because I want people to see you don't have to be perfect to love ballet. You don't have to be perfect in life. You don't have to be the perfect transgender woman. Ballet is about messing up. And 99% of the videos you see on YouTube or on TikTok or anything about ballet is going to be these perfect ballerinas who are out there sharing them nailing, 5 pirouettes or whatever. Let me show you me trying to do one because it's not very pretty, but I'm trying. And that's what I want to share. I want to start to encourage those who are nervous and scared and worried about being perfect. You don't have to be. And this community will accept you if you're not perfect because no one's perfect. They're not perfect. And so I want to encourage people to take that first step. take that first step and go to a studio, or even just start online. There are so many people who do some wonderful online stuff if you're nervous. But take that first step, because no one's going to be perfect. And you'll see some of my videos. A glissade is my arch enemy. I cannot do a glissade for the life of me. I struggle with glissades terribly.
They're hard to get that air time, and you have to have both your legs in the air for just a minute and then come back down on one and then the other. It's hard.
I know.
But no, I appreciate so much what you're doing. It's so important. And I saw your frappe combination the other day. It was lovely. I was trying to memorize it because I need new combinations for class too. So I appreciate that you're sharing that. And I think this is such an important message for dancers to hear. And I know that we're coming towards the end of our hour, but we do have the Petit Allegro section. It's just kind of quick, fun questions if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it.
Well, the first question I always like to ask, because I'm always just kind of nosy and curious about this, what's the one item that you always have to have in your dance bag at every class or rehearsal?
Well, as an endurance athlete, I have experience in my life. I cramp very easily. My electrolyte balance and my balance of salt intake and stuff like that, it needs to be very carefully regimented. So I am very careful about my intake of potassium and magnesium and electrolytes. And so in my bag, I always have 2 water bottles. One is kind of an energy boost type of drink and to get me through class. But then another one is full of electrolytes to make sure that I'm, if I start to feel a cramp, I get out there immediately and take in my electrolytes. I have potassium pills, I have magnesium pills, I have electrolyte pills. So my ballet bag is stuffed with electrolytes to ensure that I don't cramp, because I cramp easily. And when you're wearing tight clothes, that tends to make your muscles overheat. And at least me, it makes me cramp even more. So the tights and stuff like that can actually lead to more cramping. So in ballet, I'm even more careful to ensure I'm hydrating correctly, correct electrolyte input and stuff like that.
Hydration and electrolytes are so important. And then I know you mentioned that being on stage, especially that first moment stepping on stage, but every moment since has been so important for you. Do you have a favorite moment from performing on stage or maybe behind the scenes that you can share?
Yes. Well, first off, as I said, I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I didn't know why I love ballet, but now I do as the community. My favorite part about performing is being backstage.
Mine too.
It's one of my friends captured on Facebook, and I think I posted on Facebook, a beautiful moment where I'm sitting on the floor sewing a costume onto one of my fellow dancers. Well, it's on her because she doesn't know how to sew, and I do. So I was sewing on her ribbons while we're sitting there. She's drinking her coffee. We're just talking. To me, that's precious. That's the more beautiful photo than me performing. Is I just want to be backstage with my fellow dancers. I just want to be backstage with these people who I consider family and very close friends, and just hang out and share war stories and share nervousness and go share throw up time in the bathroom. And to me, that's amazing. My favorite performance, though, was probably my worst performance. It's one that I love today. I love ballet, but sometimes, I do like musical theater. And during last year's ballet intensive program, we had workshops added on to the ballet intensive, and you could take these musical theater workshops as well. And part of our intensive is if you're in town and you're able, a week later we perform. So what we learned during the intensive, we perform a week later, and we also were going to perform the musical theater workshop. And I had never done musical theater in my life. I'd never even danced in heels in my life or character shoes. And so I did the first workshop, and I was like, okay, this is terrible, really, really bad. No, I will not be performing next week. The second workshop was, okay, I could see myself, if you gave me a year, maybe I'd perform on stage. Third one is like, well, Sarah, you're going to dance with us. No. And by the fourth workshop, they had me convinced, all right, I'll do it. And so 1 week later, having only 4 lessons in musical theater class, I was out performing. And there was a couple big screw up. I was not on time. I was bad. But it was the most fun dance I ever did in my life. It was so much fun. And yeah, don't watch it on YouTube. It's available. It's available on YouTube. Please don't watch it because it's bad. Fast forward to the ballet, because I nailed the ballet piece in that same performance. I nailed the ballet piece. I looked really graceful, really beautiful. It was great. But the musical theater one, which was like almost the second, or I think actually was the first thing that we did. It was bad, but I went backstage and I was hugging everybody who I danced with. It was so much fun. So
That makes me really happy that you have musical theater workshops as part of the intensive, because I love musical theater too. So I guess my next question has to be, what's your favorite musical that you've seen?
Oh, my favorite musical? Wicked. I love Wicked. It's more because, sorry, Wicked was in Portland when I lived there with my kids. I was a single parent for a while, and Wicked was in town, and I went and saw it with a friend or somebody, and I loved it. And my kids have never had any interest in musical theater. Other than my daughter, she liked them and would watch them with me. But my boys, no interest in them whatsoever. And so I came back from the first weekend of Wicked in Portland, and I was like, oh my gosh, I loved it. It was so much fun. Would you all come with me? I want to show you this. I want you to show you my love for this, for musical theater. And my daughter was, of course, yes, I'll go. But Seth, he was like, sure, I'll go. And I was like, well, great. Okay, I got two of my kids. And so we went to see Wicked. And the entire time he was fidgety. We had really crappy seats because I spent the money on the first show. The second show was kind of an afterthought, and we were way in the back. But he was fidgety the entire time, and we went down during intermission and went and looked at the orchestra pit, and he got to see that. And at the end, I went to Seth. I'm like, so how did you like it? He's like, yeah, no, it was good. It was good. I'm like, really? You didn't seem to. Your body language said that you hated it. No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was like 3 weeks after that. He came home from school. He's like, yeah. I'm the new stage manager for our school's production of, I can't even remember what it was. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, wait a minute. You're already in a 0-0 period jazz band. You're in a 0 period jazz ensemble, and you're in JROTC, and now you're going to take on some sort of musical theater thing, drama at your school. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to be the stagehand and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, well, that's fun. And he was like, yeah, I really liked Wicked and really liked it. And then a few months later, he came home. He's like, yeah, I have a starring role in Hello, Dolly.
My gosh, wow.
And so Seth is the son I lost. So Wicked has a special place in my heart because I didn't realize how much he really enjoyed and loved the show, and how much he really did, how much my enthusiasm did rub off on him. And he did. He was dancing and singing in Hello, Dolly, and just blew all of us away because he was this incredible athlete in soccer and JRTC, and all of a sudden to see him dancing and singing on stage it was amazing, and he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And unfortunately, that was his senior year, and that was our last production, so he didn't do anything else after that. But yeah, so Wicked has a warm spot in my heart because of that connection I had with my son.
Oh, what a beautiful story. Okay, I'm going to be not okay for the rest of the day after hearing that. That is such a beautiful story, and what a powerful testament to what the arts can do in someone's life, and what, your love for the arts can transfer to someone else. So I think it's such a beautiful memory with your son that you'll always have, but it also is a testament to everything that you're doing in ballet and how that transfers to the rest of the community, and it makes other ballet dancers feel seen and heard as well. So, and it kind of leads into my last question as well, because I always like to ask, in a perfect world, what would ballet look like? So what do you see for the ballet community in the future?
I would love to continue to see the progress that I'm seeing in many studios, the acceptance and the growth, and inviting in and trying to push away this body image perfection. You have to be a certain ballet physique and style to be able to do it. I mean, no, some of the most wonderful dancers we have in our studio don't meet the traditional ballet model. And oh my gosh, I love when it's time for across the floor. I love going across the floor with them because they just do it so beautifully, and they break it down so perfectly. And I can follow really well when we're doing those combinations. And so I would love to continue to see ballet continue to accept all body types, all body shapes, all genders, because as you do, the art will continue to grow. Ballet just and the arts bring people together, and it should be bringing people together despite your identity, your body shapes, your weight. It should be open and inclusive to everybody. And so I would love to see ballet and dance continue to grow in that way, and to continue to seek to invite people to join who don't fit that model or fit that mold. Yeah, that's what I would like to see.
I would too. That's part of the magic of ballet and the arts as a whole. And we don't want to lose it. We want to keep pushing forward and keep bringing people together. So that's what I want to. And Sarah, I can't tell you how much I'm inspired by you. It's been such an honor to talk to you this past hour and to hear your story. I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to follow your work. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are too. So for anyone who wants to connect with you and keep in touch, where can they find you online or on social media?
Well, the best thing is now you can find me on Instagram. It's now public. It's out there publicly, and I'm the only Sarah Witherup out there. So if you type Sarah Witherup, you're going to find me pretty quick and pretty easily. There's no other Sarah Witherups. And again, you can contact Dance Theater Northwest if you contact our main email that goes straight to me. So it's through Dance Theater Northwest or through Instagram.
Well, that's great. We'll link to your Instagram account and Dance Theater Northwest page in the show notes. And hopefully a lot of our listeners will be able to get in touch with you that way. And thank you so much for spending so much time with me and sharing your story. It's been so great to meet you and so great to talk to you.
Well, thank you for having me. And thank you for doing this. Once I discovered this podcast, I was just like, I couldn't, again, it's a long drive into the studio. So I'm able to listen to things pretty quickly. And so it was just such a pleasure to listen to all the other stories. And now I even have more ideas for our ballet intensive because you have people who have put on other ballet intensives and do other things. I'm like, oh, and so I've been picking up a lot of little things and I'm like, oh, let's incorporate that in our studio. Oh, let's work on that too. So this podcast has been wonderful and it's been such a breath of fresh air. And I really, really have enjoyed listening to it and being on it.
Oh, that means so much to me. Thank you so much. That's all I want is for people to find, a safe space and to be able to learn things from these conversations. So it was great to have you on as a guest as well. And thank you so much for all the kind words that you said.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you for having me again.
I love talking to Sarah so much. She was so warm and open, and I was really grateful that she was willing to share so much of herself and her story with us. If you want to learn more about some of the programs she mentioned, such as Dance Theater Northwest Adult Intensive or Wear Blue Run to Remember, links are in the show description as well as a link to connect with Sarah on Instagram. You can reach out to me on social media at eBlasfield or by email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com as well. Thanks to Sarah for taking the time to speak with me and for everyone who tuned in. We'll be back next month on Tuesday, June 3rd with another special guest. And in the meantime, happy dancing, everybody, and see you at the bar.